Welcome, everyone, to the HR Stories Podcast. My name is John Tallheimer, and I am here with the smartest HR person I know, Chuck Samickian. Listen, this guy just got a big article. He just got a big article in a publication, in a hospitality publication.
Yeah.
I love what you're doing, Chuck. I love the people you're reaching and impacting. I always think that's a good thing. I love that you're doing all that.
And it's based on one of our more popular podcasts, The Trader Joe's Grandma, and about being too nice during terminations. And, you got to mention in that John Tallheimer, got a mention in that article. So your name's getting out there too. Leadership guru, John Tallheimer. John Tallheimer.
Been having some great conversations, a couple of new clients, always looking for reaching out to people. So yeah, it's all good. So what do you got? What's happening in the HR news stories?
Well, this is just an opinion letter, an article from HR Dive, but it goes along with some of the things we've been talking about over the last couple of weeks. And the headline was said, despite the EEOC shift, discrimination based on gender identity still remains illegal. And I know there's a lot of stuff going on out there, and as of this recording, it is still illegal, despite the executive order that President Donald Trump issued over the last couple of weeks. The EEOC is still reviewing gender issues in the coming weeks, months, and years, unless that Bostock gets reversed. That court order, Bostock, it is still illegal to discriminate based on gender identity.
Yeah, and I think one of the things we're going to see that play out, right? Because the Trump administration has said, well, there's only two genders, male and female, and then have kind of erased that. But that Comstock kind of plays into that and that gender identity. And I think one of the things that I will tell everyone, and it was very clear, but no one talked about it, in one of Trump's executive order trying to get rid of DEI, what the order said was you cannot do illegal DEI programs. Mm-hmm. Right? Okay, well, hopefully you haven't been doing illegal DEI programs. And so that's kind of my reminder. Again, there's a lot going on because I work in the nonprofit world and I see people like, how do we do that? Do we need to remove our pronouns? How do we handle that? And that's going to be a case-by-case decision because of federal money, grant money. They do have some power there. And so you want your leadership to really look at this. This is where getting an employment lawyer involved. The other thing that I will say, Chuck, and this is in my notes for today, was we need all of you, right? Listeners, you all need to be paying attention to what's going on at the highest level of our federal government in terms of what are they actually saying? What is the legal representative? This is where you need to check out your legal, your employment lawyers, always asking for clarification. If you hear something, don't do it just because one person said it. Make sure 3 or 4 people are saying, highly reputable people are saying it. It's very easy to get caught up in this news cycle and to be like, one day, well, yes, we can. Next day, no, we can't. So I want everyone to be there. Chuck and I are paying attention, right? And so that's part of our, it's part of our disease.
What we do.
Right?
It's what we do.
Part of our disease that we pay attention, we care, and we're paying attention to a lot of that. And so just being aware, right? And so again, paying attention to that. There's a lot out there, and you got to pay attention.
I know you have another story there, but I just want to one story that I'm following that we need to pay attention. And as HR and business leaders, when employees go on FMLA leave, they are pretty much untouchable as far as calling them, pressuring them to work. And there is a lawsuit that's going through the courts, the federal courts right now, regarding a lady named Christy Williams, who was working for the University of Alabama at Birmingham. And she was pressured to work while on FMLA. And so the big question is, when you're contacting employees on FMLA leave, where do you draw the line? So we're going to be following that. But as business leaders right now, you need to be paying attention to, if you have people out on FMLA, are you contacting them? Are your managers contacting them? Are they putting you in jeopardy? So it is all about paying attention, John.
Yeah, and I mean, the other part of that is employees, right? And so a manager goes out on leave and the employee needs direction and they're calling that person, that employee is representing your company and reaching out and doing that. And so being very clear to the employees, your manager is going to be out for 2 weeks. Do not contact them. Do not text them. Do not email them. No matter what they say, if you have a question, come to this person. They're going to be your boss for these 2 weeks. So yeah, making very clear of that. Again, it doesn't mean we can't reach out to go, hey, how things going? Are you all right? Everything's good. But we can't ask them to do work. Is really, I think we'll end up in that case from my understanding of the FMLA. So kind of a good thing in there as well. So I got 2 more things, Chuck. So the first one is, Gallop, right? So Gallop is always issuing this, they do their polls and their research, and they're always doing all this kind of great stuff. And so they just put out a new poll. And the question is this: what is attracting U.S. employees to new opportunities? And so the question they used was, please indicate how important each of the following is to you when considering whether or not to take a job with a different organization. And so the top 4 were these. Number 1, at 59%, marked very important, was greater work-life balance and better personal well-being. Right? So think about stress. Think about, I got to commute for a long distance, adding stress, or thinking about people reaching out to me while I'm on FMLA or while I'm on leave, or I need to have, my boss tells me I need to have my phone with me at all times, even when I'm not at work, right? Those are that well-balanced. We need to kind of figure that out. Are we creating, right? And we talk about this, the holistic employment experience and doing that. So that's number 1. Number 2 was significantly increases my income or improves my benefit package, right? So they're not talking people leaving like, oh, I'm going to get a $2 or I'm going to get a 50-cent raise every hour. They're talking about, and again, for some people that would be significant, but they're talking about like 10, 20, maybe $30,000 more in benefits and compensation and packages. People are going to be like, yeah, 54% say, yeah, I'm out of here for that. And then greater stability and job security. So that's at 54% as well. And so think that is, and I've been in those situations where you're like, I don't know if I'm going to have a job or not. Like the company's not doing well. Or I can imagine right now, and I don't really have to measure, but I can imagine that a lot of the federal employees right now are feeling like, I don't know in 2 months if I'm going to have a job anymore. This doesn't feel very stable. I may leave to go someplace else, right? Lastly, right, which is kind of interesting, allows me to do what I do best. 48% people said I would leave if I can get a role that's going to be better for me.
Yeah.
To me, all that is fascinating, and trying to think about as an organization, again, stay interviews. And if you do want more information about the stay interviews, go to our website, team at HR Stories. Go to, I forgot where it is in there, but there is content in there. It's a booklet. It's not a big book, but it's a booklet about stay interviews. So you can go there and look at that and it gives you worksheets and questions and all that kind of stuff to ask. So
that's great stuff. Always fascinating to hear those things, but bottom line, it comes down to know your people, do those stay interviews, and see what you can do to keep them. So that's great.
Yeah. Very good. Always good. Yeah. All right, I got one more thing to mention.
I know you do.
Dun, 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 dun. So I'm a big listener, right? I'm a big reader. And so the book that I've started reading, let's see if you guys can see it on there. Look at that. Talk, right? And so this is by Allison Wood Brooks, and it's called Talk. And it's the science of conversations and the art of being ourselves. And I love this concept of, and I listened to her speak, and she was saying, we at early age, 3 or 4, learn to talk, right? And
Mhm.
so we assume when we are like 25, we know how to talk, we know how to have conversations, we know how to handle that. And what she says is just because we've been doing something for a long time doesn't mean we've been doing it well. And so she breaks it down like, if you're going to have a conversation with your boss, do you have an agenda? Like, do you have a like, what do I want to get from this?
Right, right. Okay.
Right? Like, what do I want to get from this? Do I want him to see me or her to see me in a particular light? Do I need them to do something? Am I trying to influence them to do something? And then the one, and this is where I will probably, I just think it's so important, is those asking those curious questions to understand, right? And we all hear about it, but I don't think we do it enough. And I talk about this in the interview process, right? And so we all get that list of questions, right? We create our list of questions, and those people that are the best interviewers ask curious follow-up questions because that's where we're going to get the information. And so if Chuck says something like, well, I went away on the weekend, and I'm like, oh, that's nice, great, thanks. And by the way, versus if I'm at, oh, Chuck, where did you go? Who were you with? I start asking these curious questions. He's going to feel more connected to me. And then we're going to start building this rapport. We're going to build trust. We're going to build influence. And so hopefully then I can get Chuck to give me that $10 he has on his desk right now.
What's the name of that book again? Show us and tell us again.
Yeah, it's
That's
Talk, right?
Talk.
Talk, by Allison Wood Brooks. Available on Amazon.
Well, leaders are readers, John, and you always bring good books. You've influenced me on a few books. The Checklist Manifesto was a big one that prompted us to write our book, The Ultimate Guide to HR. And here it is right here, folks, for those that are watching on YouTube. Available on Amazon itself. Check out the show notes. John, we've got a great story, and it's a little different format for you and I. We're going to tell the story together, and I kind of like that.
Yeah, me too. I'm looking forward to it.
Hey HR pros, producer Sam here. Have you thought about how you would handle some of the situations we cover each week on the podcast? Don't wait until there's a problem to know the right solution. Whether it's online, in person, or even customized for your organization, team@hrstories.com has an interactive and engaging workshop solution ready for you. Join Chuck and John as they demystify the complexities of ABA, help you learn how to navigate some of the most challenging conversations, or even provide a blueprint of how to build an HR department from scratch. Workshops covering all of these topics and many more, along with individualized coaching, are available right now on our website, team@hrstories.com. Give yourself the best chance of getting it right by backing yourself with the right tools and recertification opportunities. Go to team@hrstories.com and grab your spot today so that your future HR self will thank you tomorrow.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the podcast. I'm John, and as always, I got Chuck Samicki in here with me, HR pro, HR leader, HR expert.
Or just Chuck. Chuck from HR. That's me. Chuck from HR. John, great to be here. It's always great to be on the HR Stories podcast with you. And today we're diving into a case that should make every HR professional and business leader stop. And what's our theme? Pay attention.
It does seem to be our theme today. That's interesting. Yeah. It's a case about pay discrimination, retaliation, and a decision that could cost a company millions, that's dollars. And here's the part that should make every employee sweat. It could have been avoided.
Yeah, but instead it turned into a lawsuit filed by the EEOC against a company called AccentCare Incorporated. I think it's all one word, AccentCare Incorporated. They're a healthcare provider, major healthcare provider.
And what's a better time to talk about this when we're approaching March 25th? That will also be Equal Pay Day.
Yeah, and for those that don't know, and I can't say I was in the know until we started working on this story. Equal pay day symbolizes how far into the year a woman must work to earn what men made in previous years. And I guess this year it's March 25th, right?
March 25th, yeah.
Yeah. So this case we're about to break down is a textbook example of why equal pay day even exists.
Yeah, so right now, if I got the numbers right, I think for every dollar a male worker, so this is on average, female workers are making 84.2 cents or something like that.
Okay.
And so we've had the equal pay law, right, since 1963, Equal Pay Act since 1963, right? And so it's been there, still not, right? This is a recent case, and we'll see in there. So buckle up, because we're going to tell you a story about a company that got it wrong, an employee who fought back, and 5 lessons every employer needs to learn, Chuck. All right, so let me set the scene. It's February 2022. AccentCare, a nationwide health company, is hiring a nurse for their Pottsville, Pennsylvania office. Now here, Chuck,
Pottsville.
do you know what Pottsville is known for?
I don't know, but I see that. I'm like, where? Pottsville. What's Pottsville?
I think that's where Yingling Brewery is.
Oh, gosh darn it. That's where I've seen Pottsville before.
Right,
Okay,
so anyway,
gotcha.
AccentCare brings in Rachel McCoy, a seasoned licensed practical nurse with over 11 years experience, most of that in home health care. She's hired $29 an hour.
Yep. Then a few months later, they hire Robert Schurer. Shearer. I'm just going to call Robert Shearer.
How about
Robert S. So Robert has been a licensed LPN for a little over a year. So maybe 10 years less than what Rachel has been. And before that, he had experience as a trauma aide and a military medic, but no home health care experience. And his starting pay, $33 an hour.
Yeah, so $4 more than Rachel, despite less experience. Now, here's where it gets interesting, Chuck.
Yeah, so companies sometimes justify these pay differences based on experience, don't they? I mean, experience, certifications, or specialized skills. But in this case,
the company had nothing to justify it. Robert's military experience, medic experience, should I say, it wasn't relevant to the role. His trauma aid background, that's a hospital setting, not home health care. His time as a COVID-19 vaccinator, not compared to what the LPNs at Accent actually do.
Okay, so why did they pay him more? That's the question.
Right. I mean, that's the thing. And then, can I look at this? So the company never provided a clear answer. So let me, before I get into my notes here, let me kind of guess, like looking at this, right? So I am assuming that they put a lot of emphasis on his military medic experience. They're like, well, he's been doing that. He did that for a long time. He was an trauma aide, right? So they was bringing this skill set into the workplace, right? But here's what we know, right? Here is what we know. Number one, Rachel had to train Robert. That's right. The less experienced, higher paid male nurse had to be trained by the more experienced, lower paid female nurse. Number two, Robert struggled with basic tasks. Rachel noticed that Robert struggled with charting, wound care, and other routine nursing duties that he should know how to do. And then finally, management ignored complaints.
Yep.
When Rachel and other female nurses raised concern, they were met with excuses.
And so here's the most frustrating part. When Rachel pushed for an explanation, they fed her lies.
Number one, they told her to request a raise. So she did multiple times. And then when she followed up, they said, there's a company-wide pay freeze.
Yeah, but guess what? There was not.
She found out later, after she'd been lied to for months, that no such pay freeze ever existed. And then when she told her supervisor that she planned to file a complaint with the EEOC,
she was fired the next day.
So this isn't just about pay discrimination. This is also about retaliation. And when the EEOC sees that, they pounce. And one of the things we know, right, when we look at the data, 58% of the EEOC cases include retaliation. And so more companies get in trouble for doing the retaliation than just suffering through, like, we weren't doing the right thing, blah, blah, blah. We made a mistake, and then move on. But when you start retaliating, the EEOC gets really kind of perturbed about that.
Yeah, and for those of you that have ever been or not been on the EEOC website, that would be a great assignment for anyone listening. Go on the EEOC website and go fill out a form on the EEOC website as if you were making a complaint to the EEOC. And what you will see is they list a lot of the discriminatory things that some, race, religion, sex, color, things like that. But they also several times ask, have you been retaliated against? And that is really interesting because retaliation is not really a protected class, but it is definitely protected. So I guess lesson number one, John, equal pay violations are serious business, right? First and foremost, the Equal Pay Act is the law. You cannot pay men and women differently for the same job unless there's a legitimate non-gender based reason.
Yeah, so you could pay somebody more if they've been with the company for longer, right? If they've been there for longer, you could pay them more. If they're in a different location based on cost of living, you could pay them. Those are legitimate reasons there. But you can't pay them like, well, Chuck, we liked his background. That's not a legitimate reason. If you're setting salaries, you need a base them on experience, skills, performance, or market data, not on gender.
All right, which takes us to lesson number 2. Retaliation is definitely a legal landmine. And this company had multiple chances to fix the problem, but instead they doubled down.
Yeah, they ignored complaints, manipulated performance reviews. Can you imagine going back and changing your performance reviews and then fired Rachel the moment she said she was going to the EEOC?
Yep, big mistake. So retaliation cases often result in higher damages than the original discrimination claim.
Which by higher damages, we mean lots more money, right?
Higher. Yeah, more expensive damages. Right. And like you said, instead of just taking your medicine and saying, okay, we made a mistake, because the EEOC, they love good faith effort. They hate retaliation.
Yeah. So lesson number 3, transparency and pay decision matters. Here's the deal. Oh my goodness. Employees talk, right? They compare salaries no matter what we tell them. And I want to remind our listeners today that under the National Labor Relations Act, our employees can have conversations about their salaries. If you see 2 employees talking in the hallway, talking in the break room, hey, how much do you make? Your first initial reaction will be like, hey, you can't have that conversation. They have every right to have that conversation.
Yeah, and if you're paying someone more than their coworkers, be ready to explain why.
Yeah, because if you can't justify it, your employees are going to assume the worst. And if they're right, the EEOC is going to get involved.
Which takes us to lesson number 4. HR must take complaints seriously. All complaints. And Rachel did everything right. She went through the proper channels. She followed company policy.
But instead of fixing the policy, and this is what gets us, it gets me annoyed, HR delayed, deflected, and eventually covered it up. And Right. We're there for the company, right? We are there for the company and to do that, but we have to make sure we're following the law.
Yeah. And if HR had just investigated the complaint, if they had adjusted that pay discrepancy, this lawsuit probably would never have happened.
God, that's so true. Right? They'd gone back and said, look, you're right. Absolutely. We made a mistake. We're going to raise your salary up to $33.50. Right? Or we're going to knock down the other one to $29, which is a little harder to have a conversation about, but kind of doing it. All right. Lesson number 5. The cost of getting this wrong is massive.
Massive, big, gigantic.
This case could cost AccentCare millions of dollars in back pay, lost wages, emotional distress damage, punitive damages.
And, legal fees. And there's that public relations disaster. No company, John, wants to be known for paying women less and retaliating against whistleblowers, especially a healthcare company, because you're thinking, oh, they should be caring. They should be understanding. They're doing the right thing. And now, boom, now we got a PR disaster on our hands. So if I could, just let me recap the lessons from this mess, okay? Pay discrimination is illegal. We got that, number 1. Number 2, this is important. Pay attention. Retaliation makes things worse. Yeah. Be transparent about pay decisions. Have reasons for why you are making these decisions. Lesson number 4, HR needs to take complaints seriously. And lesson 5, the cost of ignoring this is huge.
And I want to go back to lesson number 3, right? Be transparent about your pay decision. This does not mean that you need to tell everyone about everybody's salary and that kind of stuff. You just need to have very clear bands in your organization. If you come in at this rate, this is what you're going to be paid. And this is based on skill, experience, seniority, whatever. It's not based on gender. And have very clear documentation. We've decided to pay this person this much because of this. It was a mistake here that they could have avoided for sure. So the last thing I want to say is, look, let's not forget that on March 25th, we will reach Equal Pay Day. It's a reminder that women still make, on average, 84 cents for every dollar men make.
Yeah, and the AccentCare case is proof that this problem is not theoretical. It is real.
Yeah, and so employers, take a hard look at your pay practices. And employees, if you're listening, know your rights, right? Know that you have 180 days from the time you get paid to look at your salary. And if so, you can sue for pay discrimination under those laws. That's our Lilly Ledbetter rule, right? And so paying attention to that becomes really important for everybody.
Yeah, and if you think something isn't fair, speak up because the law is on your side.
This is a great conversation, Chuck. Any final words? Anything else you want to add to this?
No, John, it's always a pleasure. I like how we did this story. We told it together. And to our listeners, if you could share this episode, like, comment, subscribe, email us at team@hrstories.com. Email us at team@hrstories.com. Check out our book on Amazon, The Ultimate Guide to HR, Checklist Edition. It is an excellent book, if I must say so myself.
No one else is going to say. No, that's not true. We have 21, maybe 22 5-star reviews on Amazon. So it's not just us saying that it's a great book. A lot of other people are saying it's a great book. And again, what do I always say, Chuck? I don't want you to read it. I want you to use it.
Absolutely. Thanks, everyone, for listening to the HR Stories podcast, where there's a lesson in every story.
Thank you for listening to the HR Stories podcast. The material presented in this podcast is for informational purposes only. Chuck and John always recommend using an employment lawyer or HR consultant to handle any legal concerns or HR issues. We do our best to double check sources and make sure the information we are providing is accurate. We may eliminate or embellish without changing the basic narrative to make the story easier to understand. In certain circumstances, we may change identifying information to protect the innocent. The HR Stories broadcast is brought to you by the team at HR Stories. The team at HR Stories is designed to help anyone with HR responsibilities be better at managing the employee experience. To engage with us, go to the hrstoriesteam.com and learn more about how the team at HR Stories can support your business or nonprofit. Thank you for listening to the HR Stories podcast, where there is a lesson in every story.